only one place to start, and that is by talking Fuad about the mighty Tottenham Hotspur. Still say that. Very eventful week for the club. Worth pointing out, they did win 3-0 the Elfsborg in Europe midweek. I knew you'd do that. Elfsborg. I was going to say tough place to go. It doesn't even work. We didn't even go there. They came here. Anyway, 3 debut goal scorers, like all academy graduates. So it was a great week midweek. But Fuad, have to point out it was a disappointing result in the Premier League on the weekend. 2-1 loss to Leicester. I think it's fair to say, Joe, not a lot of people saw this Premier League form or predicted this Premier League form, apart from one person, Neve. Check this out. This is on our very first Saturday Social as part of her pre-season predictions.
I've seen so many, you're not the only one, so many have put them 3rd, even 4th, off the back of this window.
Yep.
But I think for the long term, as a project, I do think it's a good window.
Yeah.
However, for this season, I'm not convinced by it at all. All the weaknesses that I saw Spurs have last season, I don't think this window's fixed many of them. The defence, I think they need way more in that defence in terms of, I think they need to bring in a new defensive midfielder who can protect that defence. They need another centre-back. They need someone on the left as well. I think you need a lot of options if you're going to play such high intensity. If you watch Tottenham, the way they run on the transition back and forth, it's non-stop, it's relentless, and they need more players to make that work.
I Neve, everybody. Neve, come on, Neve.
Smashed it again once again. I like I was saying as well, DM start of the season, a lot of people said similar things. But that was Neve's take. Fuad, what are your thoughts on that and everything that's going on at Tottenham? Because I did see a little bit of a head loss from you this week, it's fair to say. So the floor is yours.
Honestly, it's complete opposite to what she said, to be fair. I think a lot of Tottenham fans coming into this season had a lot of optimism. You're thinking Ange's second season, building on kind of the good attacking football that we had last year. But you did feel like we were maybe left short a little bit in the market with a lot of youngsters coming in, maybe not ready-made first players. It's been a tough season, a season of inconsistencies. I mean, you're talking 13 losses out of 23 games. I can't remember the last time it was this bad at Tottenham, to be fair. And that's the thing, it's the reality of the situation. Something that you thought was going to be so good is all of a sudden not good. The weird thing is, we're somehow still in the Cups and we're progressing, winning the Europa League. First leg semi-final, we've actually won that. So I'm hoping, I'm praying. Could there be something magical maybe happening there? But it's wishful thinking, I think. But yeah.
Can this guy stop laughing?
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Look at him, Man United, 1 win, and he's like, oh, we're back in all this.
Well, should we have a look at the form across the last 10 games?
then.
You briefly mentioned it there, didn't you, Fuad? But the form across the last 10 games in the Premier League has been absolutely disastrous. 19th in the form table, 4 points from it. The only win in that run was actually against Southampton, who are 20th.
Can I just give this some context, Joe? You're exactly right. That is 100% accurate. That is Premier League form guide. It's worth pointing out there have been cup wins within that. We obviously knocked Manchester United, your team, out of one of the cups. Obviously,
big win against Elfsborg.
We've had some European wins.
Context,
but obviously, you are right. That is accurate. The Premier League form guide does not make.
And we can see what it means for the table well, because obviously now 15th in the league. Everton with a game in hand. They play today before Spurs play tomorrow. That's against Leicester at home. So feasibly, by the end of the weekend, could be 16th in the Premier League table. I mean, Alex, Arsenal fan, meant to be the neutral in the room, by the way. That's how
He's not neutral.
Yeah. Obviously, it's hilarious on one level. I will say I have some sympathy for Ange in the sense that the injury situation is crazy, and any club would struggle with that level of injuries. Umir actually posted something this morning. I think the league average for sprinting in possession, the numbers, basically everyone's around an average, and Spurs are like 4% up from everyone. Like on this graph that he posted, it's great. Check it out. But yeah, so to some degree, I have some sympathy for Ange, but he is leaning into this chaotic style of football, and you kind of make your bed on some level. Yeah,
let's talk about both. We'll talk about the injuries in due course, actually. It's a good point that you raised there. But let's talk about Ange. You are the best neutral in the room, I suppose, as a Man City fan. What is your take as an analyst on Ange, and do you think he's still the right man for the job at Spurs? Because injuries is an important part of all of this, isn't it? Where do you stand on Ange Postecoglou?
I think with Ange's, in terms of his philosophy, a brilliant manager in playing exciting football and playing football that can get results if, the situation suits his team, suits his players. But when you're thinking about the managers that he's competing against, I think there are other managers that are better suited at creating a team that is more sustainable in the long run.
Like who? Any
Well, I think the sort of top managers you're looking at, probably Enzo Maresca, Guardiola, Arteta, Slot. Spurs are a side that they should be competing for that top four, those top four places. And when you are looking at all of those, they're either slow in possession or they're slow out of possession. And what I mean by that is they're not, quick all of the time. You need some sort of period within the game where you sort of reset, you rest a little bit, just so in the long run, you can keep your players fit. The schedules we know are ridiculous at the moment anyway. With Spurs, I think, one, they introduce a little bit too much risk on the ball, which is really nice to see as a fan. It's exciting. But then, do they sit in deep and defend slowly? They don't do that either. They play quite quickly.
With the inverted fullbacks and what it means, the high line and everything. Fuad, you've always been a big fan of Ange, sorry. I mean, my take on Ange is that I do think injuries have played a part, and we'll look at that in a minute. But I'm still of the Ange in factor because I just think there's so many other factors at play, and I don't see the benefit of getting rid of a manager at this stage in the season. There's a lot of what he's implemented at Spurs, the attacking style that I am a fan of, and you've been very similar in that, haven't you?
Yeah, because for me, I think a lot of these circumstances, for example, the injuries, have been out of his hands.
Control.
Yeah, out of his control. But then, as you said there, I do think there are things in terms of tactically that he could have controlled it. And I think that's where a lot of fans are kind of getting their frustrations from. There has been moments in games where we've led, for example, against Leicester, 1-0 up. You should be able to come out second half and see that game out. But to concede 2 goals, is that a tactical issue where we're set up almost too advanced? But at the same time, this is the attacking football that Spurs fans were crying for when we were under Jose, under Conte. So it's kind of, you have to take your medicine if you want it. And I think there's always going to be teething issues when you're going through a long-term process. And Ange's only been here 18 months. We've had issues last year. We've had issues this year. I don't feel like they were fully addressed in the summer. And now you're kind of seeing those issues rear their head with, as you're saying, the intensity of the way we play. It's causing injuries. We didn't address that in the market. And now you're dealing with a lack of options. January, we're in the 31st and we've only signed 1 goalkeeper. Again, can you blame the manager for that? I don't think so.
Can I ask, do you think he wants to be there? Genuine question.
I do. I think he wants to be the manager to break this duct. He's a manager who's fully bought into what it is to be a Spurs manager, and it's always felt like under Jose or Conte, they felt like they were doing us a favour. But with him, it doesn't.
You mentioned injuries there. Obviously, Spurs have currently got 10 first-team players out. I mean, the list is... I think we can have a look at it now, actually. 10 first-team players out. And this list, bear in mind, doesn't include the likes of Mickey van der Ven, Rodrigo Bentancur, Pat Matsar, Richarlison, who've only just returned. And Ange made an interesting point that even the players that have returned aren't fully match fit. Mickey van der Ven only played 45 because it was his first game back. So there's been a time when we've had 13 players out. They couldn't even fulfil a Europa League match day squad. So, Alex, from a non-Spurs fan's perspective, do you think any team would struggle with the amount of injuries, or even with those injuries, should they be better than where the league table suggests?
No, any team would. And I'm being serious. I didn't even know the Dragosin one. I hadn't even seen that. That's incredible.
That could be
that's
serious.
incredible.
Serious injury for that one.
Every single team was straight. I mean, 1 injury to City, and you see that's not the only. It's not the only. But you see the drop off, and Arsenal. Everyone would. The Liverpool season with Virgil, etc. So of course, but I go back to it. If you see these managers, they see all these numbers. We're not the ones seeing these numbers, and the managers don't know. They see these numbers. How he can see that and see how much they're running and not adjust it a little bit, to me, it's insane, to be honest.
I think it's interesting as well, isn't it? You mentioned about the transfer window there. We are now 31st of January, still no outfield players signed. So let's talk about some transfers, shall we? We've asked both of our guests to bring forward 5 transfers they think Spurs should be looking to make either in this January window to save the season or maybe long-term to sort of protect the future of this squad. We're going to go in reverse order, right? So 5 least important, 1 being the most important. Fuad, you're going to go from a Spurs perspective, Umir from a neutral's perspective, I suppose. So let's have a look at both your number 5s. Who are you both suggesting in that 5 slot? You're suggesting
number 5. I have gone Joe Bellingham.
Umir, who are you suggesting in that number 5 slot?
I've gone Kelleher.
This is a road shout, bro.
Yeah.
Really? When you think Spurs have got, obviously, Vicaria's coming back, Fraser Forster's not injured anymore, they've obviously signed the keeper in Kinski. You still think goalkeeping is an area that Spurs need to address? I've
gone for him 5th because I think there are more important positions that they can prioritise. But for me, I think with Kelleher, he gives you that experience. Obviously, Kingsley's come in. I think he's quite an impressive keeper in his frame, in his ability to claim crosses, in his ability to try and play on the ball. But when I'm looking at Spurs, I think with the value of money that you pay for a keeper, the value that they provide to your team is massive. And with Kelleher, we've seen for Liverpool, he's done it on the biggest stage. He's done it at the Champions League. The way that he passes out, he has this assuredness, the amount of goals that he stops in those sort of long 1v1 situations. I think with all good teams, you need that solid foundation at the back, and it'll bring you up a solid amount, so 10 points a season at least. And for me, 26 years old, he'll be wanting to move on and not be sort of that second keeper to Alisson. And I think, yeah, he makes a lot of sense to me. Vicario, I think, is a good keeper, but he's got these sort of little deficiencies where in his game, for me, I think that loses them points throughout the season.
Fairs. I've gone with Joe, but I think it's the typical dipping into the Championship well. Over the past couple of years, we've seen Watkins, we've seen Eze, we've seen Elise, we've seen so many players come through and make that jump to the Premier League. I think the way he's playing at Sunderland this season, someone young, plays with maturity, very physical, and maybe you'd say, in midfield, Spurs are pretty well stacked, but I feel like there's a lot of young players there. He can kind of fit in with that mould, but then also with players like Bentancur, you can't really rely on his injury record. So for me, I think bringing in extra bodies is one thing that I think Spurs have been almost too scared to do over the past couple of years. Give me some extra strength and depth in midfield.
Okay. Stick them both up then. It's an interesting point you raised actually. What's intriguing for me is that, and you chopped and changed your list a lot this week. Which I think,
a lot, by the way. A lot. We had like 10 different efforts.
I think that, first, I love the effort that you went to, but I think that sort of me as a Spurs fan epitomises sort of, you almost don't know what the priority is because you need 100%. A defender, you need a midfielder. We've been linked with wingers. There's talks that they want forward players in. You've just suggested a goalkeeper, which I personally don't think is an area that is of priority. But is that the issue now that there's so many players that you think Spurs need in the squad?
100%.
That it's hard to nail down actually where the priority is.
And that's the thing. I think the injuries has highlighted that as well, where sometimes certain position, the drop-off is absolutely astronomical. For example, left-back, when Udogi's out injured, now I've got Reguilon coming back in from the wilderness, and it's like, hold on, we don't have a ready deputy. And I think it's shown the lack of quality in the starting 11, but then also the lack of strength and depth. And that's where now it's almost like with the 5, I was like, I've got to address multiple positions.
Okay, let's go with your fourth most important signing then. Who have you both gone with?
I've gone with Evan Ferguson. And the reason why
you did have the lap, didn't you?
I did have Liam
What
Delap.
was the change, the thought process and the change?
He's worried about getting rejected.
The rejections.
Worried about getting rejected.
Yes, again, I can't lie. The rejections over the past 48 hours have given me a bit of a reality check where with some players I thought, you know what, he might not come. And with Delap, I think he's going to have a lot of suitors. He's almost what Ferguson was a year ago. Because a year ago, this guy was being touted for 100 million moves. And I remember thinking, that's the closest profile to Harry Kane that I've seen in terms of ball striking, finishing. I thought he was an excellent player.
I know what you mean. He sort of burst on the Evan Ferguson.
And over the past year or so, he's had a lot of injury issues, and Brighton have put him up for loan in this
it feels
window,
crazy
which
from
is
last
absurd.
year. Yeah.
And I think with Solanke obviously getting an injury now, we don't really have a ready-made replacement. I think Richarlison has just come back from injury, but I would take the gamble on a 6-month loan, maybe see how that works out, and then maybe signing him potentially in the summer, because a year ago, 100 mil, and now you can get him for a cut price. That's the thing I'm trying to go for, smart transfers.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at yours in a minute. Might have to explain who Yasser Asprilla is to some of the fans at home.
So Asprilla, he's a player who used to play for Watford last season. He's touching on that Championship market a little bit. So in my head, whenever there's players who've played in the Championship or in England in the Premier League, I feel like there's that physical transferability into higher teams within that Premier League. On top of that, now he's moved to Girona to replace, I think, Savinho. He's a player who's really interesting. He can play off of the right wing, and I know that I think you might have mentioned it actually online where that left wing, it feels like it's not stacked, but you still got options there coming into the squad. But on that right side, with Kulusevski moving into midfield, you kind of need players on that right side. He's a very sort of almost like a jittery dribbler. He's very quick. He's very impressive in carrying down the middle. He's got a great shot on him, and he's got a good sort of lofted pass. He's a little bit raw, so I think he's almost a project player at this time. But I think his ceiling is, ridiculously high, and he can play down the middle as a number 10. He can play off of the right. I even think he could probably play off of the left a little bit. So that versatility helps in a team with a lot of injuries as well.
Do you know, I think that is a great point. It's one I wanted to raise to you, actually. I think looking at the way we play under Ange and Tottenham's sort of how we go into the transfer market, I think versatility is a massive point. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I fully agree, yeah.
Because I think you look at the way we're playing this season. I actually did some analysis of our Elfsport game. I know you're going to laugh again, but I think I'm right in saying there was only 2, possibly 3 players that started that either finished the game because of the rotation or actually stayed in the same position.
Yeah.
And if you look at where Archie Gray's played this season,
Spence.
left back, right back, centre mid, centre back. Jed Spence played on both flanks. Kulusevski's played in the middle out wide. Son's played through the middle out wide.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the Ange profile player. I think when people say we need a centre forward or a midfielder, I think that's almost a false narrative. I think what we're actually looking for is a versatile player that can play out wide or up front, or a defender that can play left back and centre back. Do you agree with that?
I fully agree. I think players have to be multifunctional in our systems because you're going to be doing multiple roles.
Yeah.
I think if you're a fullback, there's going to be moments when you're going to be the third run into the box, and similarly in midfield, you're going to be playing a multiple. Bentancur hasn't just played the 6, he's played the 8 as well. And I think, any signings we look at, we have to look at more.
Let's go with your third most important player then.
Speaking of players who can play multiple positions, I have gone for Ryan Cherky, someone who could play on the right, on the left, in the 10, and he almost seems like Europe's biggest transfer anomaly.
One of the best players in the world at the moment.
Honestly, there's no way you can watch this guy play football and not think there's magic in his feet. The technical ability is off the scales, and I think he's one of those characters that Spurs don't have in that team. Someone who can create something out of nothing.
Probably won't be able to get either.
I think Kulusevski is the only one who I can kind of look at can create something. The issue is as you just said there, is it a situation of like Tell, where he thinks he could maybe do better than Tottenham Hotspurs? But I think the fact that he was linked with Fulham last window lets me know, hey, we might be in with a shout.
What do you mean, Alex? Because obviously they have been rejected by, or reportedly rejected anyway, by Tell, potentially Tomori this morning as well.
You said you don't think you have that profile in the squad. My worry about him when I watch him is the way he dribbles. He gets you off the dribble. He doesn't push past you, and I worry about the spaces he's going to get. You want someone a bit more physical. And I look at Kulusevski and Maddison. I mean, I don't see a million miles away from, for the sort of money you'd have to spend on him. I don't see a million miles of difference, you see what I mean?
They're quoting under 25 million, so that's the reason why I think it's a smart kind of money.
Fabulous player. Yeah, such a good
I
player.
think it's a really good shout. It's someone that I would identify as a player to try and bring in. Age 21 as well, young profile. Who have you gone with, Umir?
I've gone with Brian Mbeumo.
Great shout.
And he's a player who I've spoken about for years. I almost got berated online, basically, I think, a few years ago when it was sort of that Tony. Ivan Toney was the main man for Brentford at that time. And I said, actually, look, Brian Mbeumo, he's the player who I think scales better than Tony for top teams. It's hard to know now because Ivan Toney's gone to the Saudi League, but I feel a little bit justified in that take, given Brian Mbeumo's quality at the moment. I think when I said that, he'd hit the post 7 times in one season. I said, he's 1 inch, he moves his shots 1 inch inside and he's scoring like 8 more goals.
It's a great, I think a lot of Spurs fans would, no Spurs fan would turn down Brian Mbeumo. Top player. Interestingly, only Isak, Haaland and Salah scored more Premier League goals this season. Might be a hard one to get over the line when you think of what Brentford said, but let's stick him on the board as we get to the second ones. I think Brentford will not want to lose Brian Mbeumo or Johan Visser, who Spurs have been linked with, interestingly. Heavily linked with Visser, let's have a look at, we get into the top 2 now, and this is in order, so this is players you really want us to sign. Go on.
So I've gone for a winger again, because I do feel like it is in a position we do need to address. As Umir touched on earlier, I think everybody's focused on the left wing and Matthias Tell, but I think you've got Odeberg coming back from injury, you've got Mikey Moore coming through as well, whereas on the right, Kulusevski's now moved into midfield, and Brennan Johnson's the only option. I think someone like a Kang-in Lee, you look at the PSG situation, Kvaratskhelia has just come in, Dembele, you've got Barcola. There's going to be a fall guy. And I look at him and I'm thinking he's got incredible abilities at an incredible age. We've also got Korea's greatest player. Why not come on and carry on the legacy? So for me, why not?
I think
that's not a bad shout.
It's a really interesting profile. Who have you gone for? Have you gone for a different profile entirely?
Yeah, completely different. I've gone Adam Wharton. I think we mentioned previously, his stocks feel like they're a little bit lower now than they did last season. Obviously, he's been injured and that plays a part into it. But I think it's very hard to find a sort of a true defensive midfielder player, across all leagues. What we're seeing now is almost sort of 2 sort of pivot players that can kind of play as box-to-box midfielders, but also drop in as well. And with Adam Wharton, he's got that brilliant left foot to fizz passes in. He's played in a team that's had to cover big spaces before. He can drop in and cover and protect that defence as well. And he's obviously Premier League proven. So I think given his stocks are not as high. Other teams have probably filled that gap a little bit in the market. Manchester City are, linked with other defensive midfielders as a matter of urgency. Adam Wharton might be a smart buy to, try and push through.
I've been saying it for a while. I think Spurs need an out-and-out DM because I think a lot of the time when you look at the goals conceded, people look at the back line, even when everyone's fit. But it's because our inverted fullbacks play so far forward that the centre-backs often don't have a lot of protection. I think someone out and out to sit in there is massive. How much do you think he would govern, though, as a fee? Because a lot of clubs are going to be looking at Adam Wharton, you'd think, over the next few years. What fee would you be talking about?
Similar to Umir, it might have gone down from, what was it being quoted last year? Like 70, 80, it might have gone down to sort of 40, 50.
It's only 20 years of age.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout, and we were sort of talking off air, weren't we, about sort of players who they have their moment in the sun and then you kind of fall off, people start to talk about them, and that might be the time to pick them up. I think actually just looking at the list, just to go back, I think some of these are more opportunities for me. The Evan Ferguson shout and the Kelleher shout. Kelleher for 18 months left on his deal, Evan Ferguson for the loan. That might be the space for me for Spurs to look at an opportunity. If they're not going to spend loads of money, that's more, and these are the sorts of things.
OK, let's stick them up and let's go to your most important signings. So the number one player Tottenham should be targeting.
You spoke about addressing multiple positions, and I think one position that's been bleeding for us is in defence. And I have gone with Nathan Ake, who I think people are going to be surprised at. But you look at Manchester City, Vitor Rice and Kusanov have just come in, and he's fallen further down the centre-back pecking order. I think at left-back, Gvardiol's pretty much locked it up. He is still a quality player. Prior to Gvardiol coming in, was the best left-back in the league, and I think coming in at Spurs, you give us extra depth at centre-back, you give Udogie a serious competition at the left-back position, still 29, bags of experience. I think it's one of those signings that people aren't even considering now, but maybe if he gets a lack of football over the next 6 months, maybe someone's target in the summer, but I think it's
put him up then. And Umir, have you also gone for a centre-back?
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest problem point for Spurs. I've gone Castillo Luqueba. He's a player who was actually signed as Gvardiol's replacement at Leipzig, but a brilliant player. I think, if you've not watched him, I would encourage everyone to go and watch some clips, type his name in on YouTube, because his profile of play is this sort of left-footed left centre-back who can move into those wide left-back channels, defend those really well. More impressively is the ability to sort of carry the ball forward. He looks very much like sort of in the ilk of sort of a Konate kind of player, in the sense that they're very imperious defensively, but their quality on the ball is nothing to shy away from. On top of that, he's the captain for the France's under-21s, if I'm not mistaken. So he brings that youth, but also that sensibility and that leadership into the back line. I actually think teams above Spurs will be in for him. The fact that they've not at the moment makes me think, look, it's worth pushing the boat out for a really impressive signing in Castillo Luqueba.
Just in time to be rejected.
All right, mate.
We're giving you a list of rejections.
Great insight on that. The only thing that worries me, though, you missed 10 games with a hamstring injury, and I'm like,
you can already see it.
I know, I was like, but they are the players. Let's think. A couple of Tyler Dibbling, he's a player that excites me as a Spurs fan. A couple of other names into the mix. I was going to talk about Tomori, but it looks like that one's not happening in Vista as well. But those are the 5 players that our guests have identified that Spurs should sign. And 10 different names.
Love it.
First time we've ever had that. So let us know what you think of those suggestions at home. Really enjoyed that, lads.